Today's lesson, we're going to repeat what we did in our previous lesson looking at multiple CTEs, but we're going to redo it using subqueries. So keeping track of our outline, we've already completed part 1, multiple CTEs, and now we're starting part 2, multi-nested subqueries. And the nested, it just means more than one subquery in the same statement. As we know from our previous module, a subquery and a CTE, they're the same thing, same present, different wrapping paper. So how would we redo that example we just did with CTEs, but doing it with a subquery? Well, as we know, with CTEs, we go top down, but with subqueries, we go in, out. So our first step is we want to start with the first innermost part of our subquery and then build out. So this first part here, we would just get our base data. So we're just getting our trip month, our bike ID, using our new functions that we learned, stGeoPoint, so that we can get the start and the stop. And then this is a correction. In the previous lesson, I think I had this divided by 60, but trip duration's in seconds. So we need to divide it by 120 to get it into hours. So I made that correction here. So what this is going to pull, we're going to have our month, our bike ID, a start point, an end point, and then the trip in hours. Okay, and then this is part 1. This is the first part of the subquery. Then we wrap this in our parentheses, and then we use this information and we say, okay, we're going to use our function stDistance using our end and our stop point to get the distance in meters. And then we'll convert that into miles. And we're going to select all the other columns that we have. And then we're also filtering where the trip hours are less than 12 as a way to clean our data. Final part, this is the most outermost query, part 3, and this is where we do our aggregation. So we're going to take our trip month, we're going to count the bike IDs to get our number of riders, we're going to average the trip in hours as average time, and then we'll do the same thing with distance for average distance. And then we group by our top column here, trip month. And that's it. So if we're looking at this, if we were given this query and we weren't able to go inside out like this, and we were just given this piece, what we would do is first we would identify, okay, this little nugget here, he's the inside. What is he doing? Then add 2, then add 3. Let's look at our orders of operations just to really drive this point home. So order of operations whenever you're doing a multi-nested subquery is 1, identify each query ranking. Starting with the innermost, that's 1, and then you work your way out. So we have rank 1, 2, 3. Step 2, run the inner query. Look at the results. So what we would do is we would run query 1, see what it looks like. Then we would run at the next level. That means we go up to level 2, run this chunk. What does that look like? And then we keep repeating until we've done the entire query. And that is really the only way that you're going to be able to look at a query and deeply understand exactly what's going on. Because if I were just to run this whole thing and I'm saying, okay, you're getting trip month, you're getting account, that's fine. I'm getting like the end result, but I'm not understanding how we got from our raw data, the city bike trips, all the way up to here. Now that we've looked at this at a high level in our PowerPoint, let's open up BigQuery console and code this together. Okay, so here we are. We have our data, city bike trips. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to start with that inner query. So I'm just going to go ahead and tab him in 3 times. 1, 2, 3, because I know that he's going to be inside. There's going to be 3 levels to the subquery. So I'm going to do select bike ID, comma, extract month from start time as month, stGeoPoint from start station longitude, start station latitude as start point, and station longitude, end station latitude as end point, and we wanted the trip time. And then we're going to do safe divide trip duration by 60. I'm sorry, 120. I almost did that mistake again. As trip time from our table. Let's add in our filters. First, we want the year to equal 2014. And then we want to make sure that we don't have any zeros in any of these. So, and start station longitude not equal to 0, and start station latitude not equal to 0. And the same thing for the end station. Okay, and it looks like I made him a dude instead of a tude. Okay, so let's run this. You can hit Control Enter, or I recently upgraded to a Mac, in case you're wondering why my computer looks so good. That would be the Command Enter. Okay, so I have my bike ID, I have the month, I have a starting point, I have the end point, and then I have the trip time. Okay, great. So now that we have this guy, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to collapse him. How do you collapse? If your parentheses are lined up here, this little arrow pops up. Boom. Okay, so I'm going to tab in twice. 1, 2. Select star from this guy. And then what else do I want? Well, I want to convert my points into distance. So st dist from my end. What did I call it? Endpoint. From endpoint, comma, start point as dist meters. And then if I safe divide that, this chunk here, and I divide him by 1609, then I'm going to get it in miles. And then we're going to add another where. Where, what did I call it? Trip time? Trip time. We don't want it to be more than 14 hours. Less than 14. T distance. So let me just fix that. Okay. I get my green check mark. So let's run this and see what we get. And whenever you're doing these types of CTEs, you always want to write up the query, run what you got. Make sure it looks good. Then you do the next step. Then you do the next step. Otherwise, if I were to just write all of this freehand, I would make all these mistakes and I wouldn't be able to debug it very easily. Okay, so here we go. Bike ID, month, start point, end point. I have the trip time. And if I scroll through, I don't see any 14s. We saw a lot of 14s, I think, in the last video because I was dividing it into minutes. Whoopsies. Okay, the distance in meters, 525 meters equals 0.32 of a mile. Yep, that looks good. Everything looks great. Okay, so now for this last part, let's wrap this guy. We're going to wrap him in parentheses. So I'm going to tab one time, open parentheses, and then under this where, enter backspace, close parentheses. I'm going to collapse it. Then I'm going to do select month, and then we want it to count. I keep collapsing this and I keep forgetting what I'm calling all this stuff. Okay, count bike ID as total riders. We're going to average trip time as average time. We're going to average the distance meters as average meters. Average distance miles as average miles. From where? From this crazy thing that I just made, all this. So if I collapse that, this query that we just ran, that's the from. That's what I'm querying from. Okay. But since I'm doing these aggregate functions here, here, and here, I need to do group by. Group by month. order by month. And we'll run. And here we go. So we have our different months, 1 through 12. We have our total riders, the average ride time, the average meters, and the average miles. Easy peasy. Okay, so let's jump back to the PowerPoint and wrap up this lesson. In today's lesson, we learned how to do a multi-nested subquery. We did that by looking at our CTE example and redoing it as a subquery. If you ever want to get more practice looking at CTEs and subqueries, it's a really good method to first write whatever query you have as a subquery and then back it out and turn it into a CTE. And I really like that method because then you're able to check yourself. Did I get the same answer this way and that way? And if not, what happened that made it different? And then that's a really good way to make sure that you're doing it correctly and it just makes you a better coder. So that's all we have for today. I'll see you next time.